Years before becoming the Straw Hat's cook, Blackfoot Sanji honed his culinary and martial arts skills under former pirate captain Red Leg Zeph. During his training aboard the floating restaurant in the East Blue, he forged a lasting friendship with a young stowaway who would one day lead the Black Clover Pirates and forever imprint herself upon his heart. Part 3. Baratie. Hobbling sideways in between the overstocked kitchen counters stationed upon the floating restaurant Baratie, Sanji grimaced as each chef he passed stacked an additional pan on top of the massive pile he was already struggling to carry. As he reached the sink and delicately set the pile down, the man working the station dropped a massive pot into the soapy basin and sloshed water down Sanji's clothes. "Hey, watch it!" he glowered, picking a piece of soggy pasta out of his hair. "Sorry, kid." The man shrugged as he lit up a smoke. "Didn't see you there." "Spare one of those?" Sanji pointed at the cigarette. "Don't let Zeph see ya." The man shrugged as he reluctantly offered up one of his smokes. Sanji retreated during the dinner hour from the mess of steam and cutlery that was the kitchen, and disappeared onto the back deck. He had to be quick. He had maybe 5 minutes before their head chef Zeph noticed Sanji wasn't running dishes back and forth between stations, and he needed every second to appreciate the tobacco. His lungs weren't accustomed to the habit yet, and half of every smoke break he spent coughing, but it was worth it to feel like a real part of the restaurant's team. He sat down carefully by the edge of the walkway and let his sore legs swing free over the side as he smoked. He wanted more than anything else to relax in a warm bath and let his bruised lower body soak, but he knew that wasn't likely to happen. After the restaurant closed, he had an hour of cleaning to do in the kitchen before Zeph would call him for their evening Blackfoot training session. After that concluded, he had 6 hours of freedom before prep began in the kitchen the following morning, and every moment of sleep he could scrounge was precious if he wanted to be alert for his next training session at dawn. Sanji took a long drag on his smoke as the warm sea breeze caught his blonde hair, and he let out a quick barrage of coughs. Zeph would probably have him slicing onions all week if he caught him smoking again. He had explained to him it would ruin his taste buds, and that anyone who sought recognition as a master-class chef had to have a refined, untainted palate. But Sanji was willing to take the risk. Aside from making him feel included, he hadn't failed to notice most of the gentlemen who came into the restaurant with beautiful ladies on their arm tended to smoke, and Sanji definitely wanted to attract some beautiful ladies when he grew up. He coughed again as he finished his cigarette and tossed it into the sea. As he made to stand up, he paused. He could have sworn he heard another small cough from behind him. It sounded muffled, as though someone was trying to hide that they were close by. He stood up and walked over to a crate filled with emergency life vests and peered around the side. Crouched in an awkward, timid position was a young girl with green hair, wearing one of the Baratie chef's coats like a jacket. Her eyes went wide when he noticed her, and Sanji immediately took a few steps back to show he hadn't meant to startle her. "Who are you?" he asked in complete bewilderment. There hadn't been any patrons with children that day, and even if there were, the only way to access this side of the deck was by walking through the kitchens. "How did you get here?" He tried again, but the young girl didn't respond. It took him a moment to realize her mouth was full. When she finished chewing, she raised a finger to her lips and indicated for him to be quiet. "I just needed to eat something," she whispered. "I'll be gone by tomorrow." The girl had a very slow and cautious manner of speech, and hadn't blinked once since Sanji had found her. Her hair was cut boyishly short, and her arms and hands seemed delicate and frail, like they hadn't had real strength behind them for a long while. She reminded him of a mouse trapped in a snake's cage, delicately watching wherever she set her foot down so as not to alert the vicious beast, but at the same time still driven by the hope that she would breathe free air again. "What are you eating?" Sanji asked. The girl had been careful to keep her meal hidden safely between her clasped hands, but he could tell by the smell it wasn't fresh. "I'll be gone by tomorrow," she repeated. "Just don't tell anyone. I can get you something better than that." Sanji blurted out in annoyance as he finally realized she had been digging around in the discarded produce bin and found the better half of an old potato. Without pausing for a response, Sanji ran back to the kitchen and returned 3 minutes later with one plate stacked high with freshly baked bread, steamed halibut, rice and vegetables, and the second plate of shrimp jambalaya. "Here, don't move," he instructed her. "I forgot utensils, and a chair, and you need something to drink." He stood up again and ran back to the kitchen. By the time he was back, the stowaway had inhaled most of the food using her bare hands. Here. Sanji smirked as he produced a stool for her to sit on. I found some clean silverware and some tea. He set down the tokens of good faith on the crate next to her. You didn't have to dig through the trash if you wanted something to eat, he continued. We would have fed you even if you don't have money. The girl gave him a suspicious look as she continued eating, barely pausing to take a breath between her sips of tea and mouthfuls of fresh, warm food. I'm Sanji, he said as he sat down across from her. What's your name? How did you get here? She paused as she looked back at him with an expression of confused dismay on her face. I'm Marion. I don't know, she whispered after a moment. I made myself fly. Huh? Sanji asked. What does that mean? Marion pointed out at the horizon. I was out on a ship, and I was hungry, and this boat smelled really good, so I closed my eyes and then I was here. I made myself fly. I don't get it. Sanji made a perplexed face. You flew here like a seagull? No. She shook her head. I just was here. Why didn't you fly back? He asked. I couldn't. Her voice quivered after a long pause. When was this? Sanji tried. When you first flew here? The girl paused to think. There was a big pot of soup. Thursday? Sanji's jaw dropped in astonishment. You've been here nearly 5 days and no one has seen you? You've been eating trash this whole time? She gave him a shameful look, as though she realized she had been acting irresponsibly, and he quickly changed his tone of voice. I mean, I'm not mad at you for stealing food or anything. I just wish I had found you sooner so I could feed you. Her spirits seemed to lift at that. Where are you going tomorrow? He asked. Nowhere, she admitted. I don't know how to leave or where to go. I just said that so you would leave me alone. As Marion became more animated and shifted her weight on the deck, Sanji noticed faded bruises on her ankles as she crossed her legs in front of her. The ship you were on, did it have blue and white sails? He tried. She looked up from her meal and caught his eye. Why? You were on that Navy ship. Sanji spoke aloud in revelation, more to himself than to her. The Vice Admiral came on board. He mentioned to Zeph he was carrying prisoners. Did they have you chained up? The frightened look appeared in her eye again. That's why you stayed hidden this whole time. You thought we'd turn you back over to the Navy if we found you, Sanji continued without waiting for an answer. I thought this was a Navy station, she admitted. By the time I realized it wasn't, I had stolen too much food. What did you do? Sanji asked. You're just a kid. Why would they chain you up? She hesitated and took another swig of tea. You won't tell anyone, Sanji? She looked sideways at him again, her face revealing hints that she wanted to trust him. He nodded his head. I stole this really important fruit. I was hungry, she stated without much remorse. Apparently, it was very valuable. I only took one bite, but suddenly everyone began to look at me like I was a monster. They took me from my parents and locked me up before putting me on a ship. A devil fruit? He asked, a cold pit of concern starting to settle in his stomach. Sanji remembered what he had read about the pirates with devil fruit abilities on the Grand Line when he was researching the All Blue. She shrugged. I lived on a very small island. Nothing grew there. We relied on Navy ships coming to supply us with goods in exchange for our working on their ships. I was always hungry. I saw a piece of fruit, and now I'm a criminal. No, you're not. Sanji shook his head. You're a scared, hungry kid. They should have never done that to you, no matter what you stole. She smiled at him as the door swung open and Zeph clomped out onto the deck, his wooden leg pounding the planks beneath him as if he were driving in nails. Sanji! He bellowed, and the young boy shot to his feet immediately. What are you doing eating alone out here? Eat in the kitchen. There's work to do. His head chef paused. Have you been smoking again? Sanji glanced around in a panic to discover Marion had vanished, as if into thin air. He was so relieved, all he could think to say as he turned back to look Zeph in the eye was, Yep. Zeph rolled his eyes. I may as well remove your tongue since you care so little about it. But then you wouldn't be able to read the specials to the customers. I'm forbidding the staff from sharing with you anymore. Finish up and get back inside. Yes, sir, Sanji acknowledged as Zeph turned around and marched back into the kitchen. He turned back just in time to see Marion reappear next to him, as if walking through an invisible door. Did you make yourself fly just now? He asked. She nodded, a bread roll still clenched between her teeth and her teacup still gripped in her hand. Sanji was suddenly able to piece together how Marion had managed to escape her shackles and board the floating restaurant without disembarking from the Navy ship. The devil fruit she had eaten allowed her to teleport, to alter her location based on line of sight. He smirked and reached out to take his hand in hers. "Looks like we'll be able to help each other out. You'll be safe here with me, Marion, I promise." She swallowed her food and for the first time cracked a smile wide enough to show her teeth. "Thank you, Sanji. Do you have any clothes I could borrow?" He smirked. "I'm the only one on board in your size. Want to try on a suit jacket?" Sanji wiped the sweat from his brow as Zeph set 4 watermelons atop 4 different barrels scattered around the deck. Most of the morning, they had been working on accuracy. Zeph would randomly toss a piece of old fruit or spoiled vegetables up into the air and instruct Sanji to strike with his right or left foot. He had succeeded in every challenge that had been assigned to him that morning, but was suddenly confused about why Zeph would have him targeting stationary objects. He had developed enough leg strength where kicking through 3 watermelons lined up in a row was easy, so if this wasn't a test of power or accuracy, what was the old man planning? "Range," Zeph answered his unspoken question. "Destroy all 4 melons with 1 blow without knocking over the barrels." Sanji looked at him like he was crazy. "How am I supposed to do that? They're spread too far apart. I can't stretch myself like an elastic man." "What? Do you think your opponents are going to line up within your leg reach and wait to be struck? Blackfoot's style's only weakness is the restriction of movement, of relying too heavily on the expectation of close combat. You must turn that weakness into strength. Extend yourself beyond the length of your legs. Astound your enemy with the infinite range of your limited reach." "Well, I'm not going to jump if all you're packing in my chute are vague instructions, old man," Sanji countered defiantly. Above them, thunder reverberated its way across the sky. "Blackfoot's style, more than any other, requires a literal leap of faith," Zeph responded. "A swordsmaster may teach you the way of the blade. An archer may instruct you on the flight of an arrow, but I cannot instruct you how to use your own legs. You know better than anyone their full potential, and what may work for one man may not be effective for another. I can only assign you the target you aim for. You must bridge the gap. There is no single right answer." "Heh, my legs say I'm only human," Sanji retorted. "Are you?" Zeph replied with authority. "It does not require a devil fruit to perform feats of great strength and skill. But if you choose to decide you are only capable of average human abilities, then you shall forever remain trapped to compete on that playing field." Sanji rolled his eyes. He stared at all 4 melons carefully for a few moments, and then charged forward. He flipped himself onto his hands, swung his right leg in a wide arc, and extended it as far as he could. His heel grazed 3, leaving shallow imprints on the outer skin. The 4th remained untouched. Sanji flipped himself back onto his feet. "Doing it in 4 swipes would be easy, but 1? How am I supposed to accomplish that?" Zeph shrugged and pivoted on his wooden leg. "That's for you to solve. Let's see if you can succeed before the rain begins to fall." The master chef returned into the kitchen and shut the door behind him. Sanji hissed with irritation as he turned back to look at the melons. "You need to be faster," a voice came from above. Sanji turned and glanced upward. Marion sat on the deck above, wearing one of his pinstriped suits, his favorite blue necktie hanging crookedly from her slender neck as she kicked her legs. She beamed happily as she took a drag on her cigarette and exhaled a puff of smoke. "What does being faster have to do with extending the reach of my leg?" Sanji asked as he crossed his arms. "Did you bring any smokes for me?" She winked and teleported herself down next to him and handed him 2 cigarettes. "Got them from the crew's quarters," she explained. "You were right. Only swiping 2 or 3 at a time will prevent anyone from noticing." Sanji stuck one of the smokes behind his ear for later and lit up the second with a lighter kept in his back pocket. "Still, best to pick a different bunk every time. They'll catch on after a while." She blew a smoke cloud into the air above her head as the thunder boomed again. "What were you saying about being faster?" Marion bent forward and placed her hands on the deck, mimicking what Sanji had attempted to do before. "He said 1 single blow. He didn't mention about how to use your arms. You planted your arms like posts and swung your leg around by pivoting your body. Walk across the deck a few steps using the palm of your hands and follow through with a longer swing of your leg. she instructed him as she straightened up. She pointed towards the melons as she continued. Don't aim for the first one. Aim for the second too. The first will just get caught in you lining up the kick. Sanji raised an eyebrow. I've never tried moving on my hands that way. People move their legs to better throw a punch. You need to do the reverse when you swing your legs. She explained like it was the easiest thing in the world to contemplate. What about the fourth melon? He asked. Worry about the first 3 for now, she suggested. The fourth can wait. Sanji spent the next 20 minutes walking across the deck on his hands, balancing on one palm and the other, Marion helping him occasionally by holding his heels to help him keep his balance. Honestly, she teased him, how would you have accomplished any of this without me? Sanji glanced up at her from his inverted position. Maybe I wouldn't, he admitted. Maybe you're the one that'll help me be more than just human. Baked Alaska for dinner tonight? She asked excitedly, as he jumped back onto his feet and checked his hand for splinters. The quicker I smash some melons, the quicker we can eat, he confirmed. The rain began to sprinkle upon the deck, and both instinctively shielded their cigarettes with their hands. Then hurry up before we get soaked, she insisted. Hold this. He handed her his smoke and then lined himself up on the deck. I have to do this quick before the deck gets too slippery. Sanji took 2 long strides and then flipped himself forward onto his hands. Winding his lower body up like a pitcher at the plate, he danced a few paces forward nimbly on his hands and followed through. His swing knocked the first and second melons off and nudged the third as well, but didn't come anywhere near the fourth. In rapid succession, Marion teleported across the deck and replaced the fallen melons with fresh ones before reappearing at his side. You can teleport with melons now? Sanji raised a curly eyebrow. Yep, she smirked as she exhaled a ring of smoke. I've been getting better at it. He reached out to her for his cigarette back, but she stubbed it out on the railing instead. Not until you get this. I want dessert. She smirked and teleported herself back up to the deck above to watch. Sanji spent the next 2 hours in the pouring rain, hurling himself forwards, right side up, upside down, and sideways at the melons, approaching them from different angles, and every time he destroyed them, Marion would reappear and replace them for him, just to disappear again. His feet and legs were sore, he was drenched and freezing, and he had melon all over his shoes and pant leg. I'm not going to get this, he raged. It's not possible! From under her umbrella, Marion lit up another smoke and contemplated. Hey, how far could you kick one of those? She asked him suddenly. Why? He glared up at her. What difference would that make? Every time you swung your leg, your goal has been to cave in the melons and make them explode. Yeah, I get your legs are strong, but being strong doesn't mean you have to be destructive. You can be delicate and strong at the same time. Sanji paused as he glanced around the mess of fruit debris all over the deck. He glanced down at the blisters starting to form on his hands, and finally at the fourth melon he had yet to strike. He glanced rapidly across all 4, and a knowing smirk formed across his face. I get what you're saying. He ran forward, flipped himself onto his hands, and swung both of his legs in helicopter fashion. Pivoting on his upper body, he swung his legs, scooped up the first 2 using his toes and heels, adjusted his stance on his hands, and hurled the 2 he was wielding with his feet at the other 2 that were stationary. The 4 melons collided in 2 great wet crashes, and the pieces were hurled overboard into the east blue. Sanji flipped himself over and landed on his left foot and right knee. 1 swing with each leg equals 1 blow. All 4 targets destroyed. Infinite range with limited reach. He lit up the soaking wet smoke that had been tucked behind his ear and glanced up at Marion. She was stuffing her face with a plate of baked Alaska under her umbrella. Sorry. I teleported to the kitchen really fast. What did I miss?